Welcome to CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf, your exclusive pass to the most impactful business books shaping industries and driving innovation. I'm your host, and today we're diving into a book that's not just changing how we think about negotiation, but revolutionizing the way we communicate in every aspect of our lives. Imagine this. You're an FBI hostage negotiator. The lives of innocent people hang in the balance. Every word you say could mean the difference between life and death. How do you stay calm? How do you connect with someone who seems unreachable? And most importantly, how do you get what you want without compromising what's right? These are the questions at the heart of our book today. Never Split the Difference, Negotiating as if your life depended on it, by Chris Voss. Voss isn't your typical business guru. He's a former FBI hostage negotiator who's taken the high-stakes techniques he used to save lives and applied them to the business world. And let me tell you, the results are nothing short of revolutionary. But before we dive in, I want you to think about the last time you were in a difficult negotiation. Maybe it was asking for a raise, dealing with a difficult client, or even trying to get your kids to eat their vegetables. How did it go? Did you get what you wanted? Did you feel good about the outcome? Hold that thought, because by the end of this episode, you'll have a whole new toolkit for handling these situations. Let's start with what Voss calls tactical empathy. Now, I know what you're thinking. Empathy in a negotiation? Isn't that soft? Shouldn't we be tough, unyielding, ready to walk away at any moment? Well, buckle up, because Voss is about to turn everything you think you know about negotiation on its head. Picture this. It's 1993, and Voss is standing outside an apartment in Harlem. Inside are three heavily armed fugitives. The situation is tense. Lives are at stake. What does Voss do? He doesn't make demands. He doesn't threaten. Instead, he says something surprising. It looks like you don't want to come out. It seems like you worry that if you open the door, we'll come in with guns blazing. It looks like you don't want to go back to jail. For 6 hours, Voss repeated variations of this statement. And you know what happened? All three fugitives came out peacefully. Why? Because Voss had tapped into something fundamental about human nature. We all want to be understood. This is tactical empathy in action. It's not about being nice or agreeable. It's about truly understanding the other person's perspective and demonstrating that understanding. It's about creating a connection that allows for real communication. Now, you might be thinking, that's great for hostage situations, but how does this apply to my business? Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a negotiation where emotions were running high, where you felt like you and the other person were speaking different languages? That's where tactical empathy comes in. Let's say you're in a contract negotiation with a difficult client. Instead of pushing back against their demands, try this. It seems like you're feeling frustrated with the current terms. It looks like you're worried about getting value for your investment. Am I understanding that correctly? By articulating their concerns, you're not agreeing with them. You're not giving in. You're simply showing that you understand. And that understanding creates a foundation for real problem solving. I want you to try this in your next difficult conversation. Take a moment to really consider the other person's perspective. What are they feeling? What are they worried about? Articulate that back to them. You might be surprised at how quickly the tone of the conversation changes. Now, let's move on to another powerful technique Voss introduces, mirroring. This is a simple yet incredibly effective tool that can help you build rapport and gather information. Mirroring is exactly what it sounds like. You repeat the last 3 words, or the critical 1 to 3 words, of what someone has just said. It sounds almost too simple to be effective, but the results are astonishing. Voss tells a story about using this technique during a bank robbery negotiation. The robber, let's call him Chris, had been vague about the number of accomplices he had. Voss mirrored his statements, and suddenly, Chris started revealing crucial information. "The other vehicle's not out there because you guys chased my driver away," Chris blurted out. Voss simply repeated, "We chased your driver away?" "Well, when he seen the police, he cut," Chris replied, revealing even more information. This simple technique led Chris to volunteer information about an accomplice the FBI didn't even know existed. That's the power of mirroring. But mirroring isn't just for high-stakes FBI negotiations. It's a tool you can use in your everyday life to build rapport and gather information. In fact, a study showed that waiters who mirrored their customers' orders back to them received 70% more in tips than those who used positive reinforcement. Imagine you're in a sales meeting. Your potential client says, "We're looking for a solution that's cost-effective and easy to implement." Instead of launching into your pitch, try mirroring, "easy to implement." This simple repetition encourages the client to elaborate, giving you valuable information about their needs and priorities. It also makes them feel heard and understood, building that all-important rapport. I challenge you to try mirroring in your next conversation. Pick out the most important words the other person says and simply repeat them back as a question. You'll be amazed at how much more information you'll get and how much smoother the conversation flows. Now, let's explore another powerful technique Voss introduces: labeling. Labeling is the verbal equivalent of holding up a mirror to someone's emotions. It's a way of identifying and articulating someone's feelings, often before they've fully recognized those feelings themselves. And it's an incredibly powerful tool for diffusing negative emotions and building trust. Here's how it works. You use phrases like, "it seems like," or "it sounds like," followed by a tentative description of the person's emotional state. For example, "It seems like you're frustrated with how this project is progressing." Now, why is this so effective? Because when you label someone's emotions accurately, it makes them feel understood. And when people feel understood, they become less defensive and more open to finding solutions. Voss tells a story about using this technique in a hostage negotiation in Haiti. The kidnappers had demanded $150,000 for the release of their hostage. Instead of arguing about the price, Voss and his team used labeling to address the kidnappers' underlying emotions. They said things like, "It seems like you're worried about your future," and "it sounds like you feel this is your only option." By acknowledging these feelings, they were able to build rapport with the kidnappers and eventually negotiate the hostage's release for a fraction of the original demand. But labeling isn't just for hostage situations. It's a tool you can use in any negotiation or difficult conversation. Let's say you're dealing with an angry customer. Instead of getting defensive, try labeling their emotions. "It sounds like you're really frustrated with our service." This simple acknowledgement can often diffuse tension and open the door to problem solving. Voss also introduces a powerful variation of this technique called the accusation audit. This involves proactively labeling the negative feelings or accusations the other person might have about you. It's a way of addressing potential objections before they're even raised. For example, let's say you're asking for a raise. You might start the conversation like this: "I know you might think I'm being greedy, or that I'm not considering the company's budget constraints. You might even feel that my timing is poor given our current challenges." By voicing these potential objections yourself, you take away their power. You show that you've considered their perspective, which makes them more likely to consider yours. I want you to try this in your next difficult conversation. Take a moment to consider what negative emotions or accusations the other person might have. Voice them yourself. You'll be surprised at how disarming this can be. Now, let's move on to one of Voss's most counterintuitive pieces of advice: the power of no. We have all been taught that in negotiation, the goal is to get to yes. But Voss argues that no is actually where the negotiation begins. Why? Because no is protection. It makes people feel safe and in control. When you push for yes, people become defensive. But when you give them the freedom to say no, they feel like they have autonomy and become more open to what you have to say. Voss gives an example of how this works in practice. He suggests that instead of asking, "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" which pushes for a yes, try asking, "Is now a bad time to talk?" This gives the person the freedom to say no, which paradoxically makes them more likely to engage with you. This principle can be applied in all sorts of situations. In sales, instead of asking, "Would you like to buy this product?" try, "Would it be outrageous to suggest that this product could help solve your problem?" By inviting a no, you're actually opening the door to further conversation. Voss even shares a brilliant email technique based on this principle. If someone isn't responding to your emails, he suggests sending a one-line email that says, "Have you given up on this project?" This triggers the person's loss aversion. They don't want to give up, and often prompts a quick response. I want you to experiment with this in your own life. Look for opportunities to invite a no instead of pushing for a yes. You might be surprised at how much more cooperative people become. Now, let's talk about one of Voss's most powerful tools, calibrated questions. These are questions designed to give your counterpart the illusion of control while actually guiding them towards your desired outcome. Calibrated questions typically start with how or what. They're open-ended and require more than a simple yes or no answer. For example, instead of asking, "Can you do that?" which can be answered with a simple no, you might ask, "How can we make this work?" Voss used this technique to great effect in hostage negotiations. In one case, kidnappers were demanding $150,000. Instead of arguing about the price, Voss asked, "How am I supposed to do that?" This simple question forced the kidnappers to consider the problem from Voss's perspective, leading to a more reasonable negotiation. But this technique isn't just for hostage situations. Imagine you're in a salary negotiation and your boss has offered you a raise that's lower than you were hoping for. Instead of rejecting it outright, you might ask, "How did you arrive at that number?" Or, "What would it take to make that number higher?" These questions accomplish several things. They gather information, they make the other person feel in control, they get to explain their reasoning, and they subtly challenge them to justify their position. I want you to start incorporating these calibrated questions into your conversations. Instead of making statements or demands, try framing your points as how or what questions. You'll be amazed at how much more information you'll gather and how much more cooperative people become. As we wrap up, I want to emphasize something crucial. These techniques aren't about manipulation. They're about effective communication. They're about understanding the other person's perspective, making them feel heard, and collaboratively finding solutions that work for everyone. Voss's approach to negotiation isn't about winning at all costs. It's about creating value for both sides. It's about building relationships, not burning bridges. And that's what makes it so powerful in both business and personal contexts. So, let's recap the key takeaways from Never Split the Difference. 1. Use tactical empathy to understand and articulate the other person's perspective. 2. Practice mirroring to build rapport and gather information. 3. Label emotions to diffuse tension and build trust. 4. Embrace the power of no to make people feel safe and in control. 5. Use calibrated questions to guide the conversation while giving the other person the illusion of control. Now, I want to share a personal anecdote about how I've applied these techniques in my own life. Recently, I was negotiating a contract with a new client. The initial offer was lower than I had hoped, and my first instinct was to counter with a higher number. But instead, I decided to use Voss's techniques. I started with tactical empathy. It seems like you're looking for high-quality work while also being mindful of your budget constraints. This immediately changed the tone of the conversation from adversarial to collaborative. Then I used a calibrated question. How did you arrive at that number? This gave me valuable insight into their thought process and constraints. Finally, I used labeling to address potential concerns. You might be worried that a higher fee would mean less value for your investment. The result? We had a much more open and productive conversation. We were able to find creative solutions that met both our needs, and we ended up with a deal that was better than either of us had initially proposed. More importantly, we started our working relationship on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. That's the power of these techniques. They're not just about getting what you want in the moment. They're about building relationships and creating value in the long term. As we come to the end of this episode, I want to encourage you to put these techniques into practice. Start small. Try mirroring in your next conversation. Use a calibrated question in your next meeting. Practice labeling emotions when dealing with a difficult situation. Remember, like any skill, these techniques take practice. You might feel awkward at first, and that's okay. Keep at it. The more you use these tools, the more natural they'll become, and the more effective you'll be in all your interactions. And if you want to dive deeper into these concepts, I highly recommend getting a copy of the book, Never Split the Difference. Voss provides even more techniques and real-world examples that we didn't have time to cover today. You can find a link to purchase the book in text or audiobook format in the episode description below. Remember, every book we discuss on CEO's Library has been carefully selected to help you think bigger, lead better, and transform your business and life. Before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought from Voss. Negotiation is not an act of battle. It's a process of discovery. The goal is to uncover as much information as possible. So, go out there and start discovering. Use these techniques to uncover information, build relationships, and create value in all your interactions. Whether you're closing a $1 million deal or deciding where to have dinner with your spouse, these skills will serve you well. Thank you for joining me on CEO's Library, the 1% Bookshelf. Until next time, keep reading, keep learning, and keep connecting.